All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to call the public meeting of Toronto Community Housing Corporation Board's Tenant Services Committee to order. I'm Mary Hogan, and I'm chair of the Tenant Services Committee. Welcome to today's hybrid committee meeting, which is taking place in person at City Hall and virtually via WebEx. Firstly, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting and in-person meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Before I get into the real substantive parts of the meeting, I'd just like to say that I had the opportunity about a week or so ago to have a tour of, partial tour anyways, of the central region. And I got to see the regional office, and I was at 155 Sherbourne in Moss Park. And I want to thank the general manager of the central region, John Kraljevic. And there are a number of people who I met and who were particularly helpful. And we had some good, I think, conversations. And I'd like to just read out all of those people's names because I really did appreciate how helpful, and not just helpful, but welcoming they were. And I obviously hope to see more of the central region, but I know I have scheduled in the next few weeks tours in both the west and the east regions. So I'm looking forward to those tours as well. So I have a list here, and I hope no one is missed. And if someone is missed, my apologies. Okay, but I just want to thank Peter Campita, Koshin Ali Aden, Romorland Belize, Rex Bombay, Christian Wallig, Lorena Salazar, Raleigh Ferrer, Lily Pasua, and Jennifer Lorenzo. Also, Leandro Rocha, Ophelia Sabini-Ego, Amanda Abraham, Jasmine Chandy, Terrence Smith, Stenton Abbott, Felix Jerome Taja, Jerry Herrera, Don Gaskins, Camille Abraham, Keisha Tanner, Cosmin Florulu, Bradley McHugh, Benjamin Savoy, Charlene Jones, and Sharmila Selva Kularaja. Okay? You were all extremely helpful and welcoming, as I said. Okay. Firstly, I'd like to ask if there are any members of the Tenant Services Committee who have a conflict of interest together with and if so, to tell me what it is and describe the nature of the conflict. Okay, so are there any conflicts of interest declared? Okay, seeing none, we can move on. And I should note that we do have quorum. I have members Debbie Douglas and Marcel Charlebois and Dan McIntyre, all here. A couple on WebEx, and Dan is also here in person. Okay. I was just saying, Dan, that you're here in person. I was just going through everyone who was here. Yeah, I think it's you too, Dan.
Nobody else wants to.
I'm not going there. Okay. All right, then. Yeah, and I guess, and Uba is, do we know if Uba was coming on? Uba there? Okay. All right, well, if she does, I'll indicate that. All right, then, firstly, I would like to ask you to approve the public agenda items. Right, okay, that's right, okay, thank you. I'm still a bit new. All right, there are deputations on all of the items, or they're being held for a presentation. So really, the only item at this point that we'd be approving, I believe, is, well, first of all, don't we have to approve the agenda? Okay, thank you. And I'm told that as part of the approval of the public agenda, also approving the minutes, which were the public meeting minutes going back to November 21st, 2025. So would somebody prepare to make that motion? Dan, I'm looking at you. Dan, okay. Dan is moving that. Do I have a seconder? Marcel, thank you. All in favor? Great. Motion then is passed. Then we go down to, I believe, business arising from the public meeting minutes and action items. And and there is a deputation on this, and so we've held this item on the meeting agenda. Is there someone to, this is with regard to, I know, the winter mats and that whole issue. Now, there is a deputant. Who we see?
So we have Victoria. She's on the WebEx meeting.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yes. Oh, and Uba has also just joined.
Okay, just for the minutes then. Good morning, Uba. Welcome. Okay. We've just really started the meeting, and we're now dealing with item 5. Okay. Thank you. All right, then. Is the deputant Victoria? I see her. I've not seen her on my screen. But.
So she's in the WebEx meeting. So Victoria, if you're ready, you can go ahead with your deputation.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome.
Okay.
Good morning to you.
Good.
You can go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're
Good morning, Chair, members of committee, and resident. I just want to shed a little bit of light to the agenda 5, item 4. I was hoping to add my feedback after the update. But at the moment, and the accessibility issue was largely addressed in the lobby area, and the main issue is there's still not enough room on the site for location and to safely navigate in and out, and attempt to address this have proven that there's still that big gap between lived experience, resident with this disability, and staff. So we are asking that this issue be revisited before the June report. There's also unexpected extreme snowfall that create more hazard, especially in the vestibule area, the buzzer system where the snow is coming from under the door, and when the automatic door is open, causing the carpet to be filled with snow, sometimes ankle deep, which also create safety hazard for all residents living, coming and going. So second look, perhaps with input from Bill Standard team, ARPA, this has been the worst winter in a long time, and the safety is there. And then we're also requesting because some of the time this winter, the vestibule area, the carpet is frozen, and people are falling and sleeping all over the place. Someone's supposed to be doing this today, but they back out last minute. So I'm doing my best with my visual impair, like accessibility need to be taken seriously. Right now, it's just a lot of safety hazard around inside and outside. So my goal today is to continue the open door between resident and staff to resolve this and other standing accessibility issues. So basically my job today is to invite chair, member of accessibility team to different lengths to make sure this ongoing issue is resolved. Thank you so much. I appreciate this platform to bridge the gap between bridge the gap for resolutions.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your deputation. And I'm getting a bit of feedback there. Oh, okay. Again, thank you for your deputation. And I know that you put something in writing and also provided some pictures, which I know for me were particularly helpful. So we all really appreciate that. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to, oh, sorry, hang on. Dan, I know you have a question. Yes. Hang on. Dan McIntyre, one of the members of the committee, has a question. Okay.
Oh, that one. The long one. Thank you, Victoria. I think you could give lessons to people on how to write a brief and how to present a document to organizations like this. Maybe you should get some lessons to make a couple bucks on the side. So I found your rep very helpful. I'm hoping that our COO may have some brief response now and perhaps a fuller response for the committee or the board next week, addressing the issues that you've arose and what we're doing about it, and whether or not we could meet most, if not all, of your suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So through the chair, happy to comment on the deputation and the comments by our committee members. So absolutely, we also found the deputation quite helpful, and we will be reaching out to Victoria and our RPATH committee before we bring the report back to the Tenant Services Committee in June. And so the commitment is to improve our service delivery in this area. With respect to the snow removal and the winter that we've had, we will be communicating with staff to see if there's additional steps we can put in place. I do not anticipate having a more fulsome update for the board next week, but we certainly plan to come back in June with a report that outlines some of the recommendations and what we plan to do about it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? All right, then. Again, Victoria, thank you. You've heard what Nadia has had to say, and certainly it's being looked into, and there will be a full report coming forward. And I know that they will be in touch with you. But again, I will say, as Dan said, what you provided was particularly helpful, certainly to those of us on the Services Committee, and I'm sure to staff as well. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right, then. I think I need a motion with regard to item 5 to receive the action item updates. And it's also if everyone... Someone, oh, Debbie, you're moving it? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Uba, great. And all in favor? Passed. Thank you. All right, then. The next item is item 6, the Public Tenant Services Committee Work Plan. And I believe there's a deputation on that. Yes. And that's Ms. Wilkinson, Catherine. Yes. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, tenants, guests, other staff. I have 2 smaller items that I'd like you to consider adding to the Tenant Services Committee work plan. The first one is a review of the use of non-residential space policy for tenants and tenant-led groups. And this policy pertains to Toronto Community Housing community rooms and outdoor space and tenants accessing and using this space. Some of these rooms are open daily. The majority of these rooms are locked unless there is a scheduled programming or community event. At one time, for many years, it was considered a partnership between tenants and management, and we would sit down every couple of years, review and revise this policy together. But management has since removed tenants from that process. So management revised it in 2021, so that was like 5 years ago, and they added additional pages with criteria specific to COVID. Now, management may indicate this is an operational policy and therefore, really shouldn't come to the Tenant Services Committee. However, on the contrary, this policy pertains to tenant engagement, and the Tenant Services Committee and tenants should be included, in my opinion, in the policy review on access to community rooms, which were at all times intended for tenant use. So tenants have begged management to unlock these rooms to allow tenant daily access, but so far that's not working. It actually took the mayor of the city of Toronto to require Toronto Community Housing to open their community rooms as cooling rooms for tenants from June 1st to September 30th. No muss, no fuss, just do it. And so it was done. It's that easy. So I think we need to build on this momentum and discuss what needs to change in order for management to consider removing the barriers for tenants to access these community rooms. That's item one. Item two is to bring forward some sort of a report understanding on solicitation in Toronto Community Housing buildings. So what types of solicitation is permissible in Toronto Community Housing buildings, what hours is solicitation permitted to take place, and what is not permitted. And this is as it relates to a tenant's right to reasonable enjoyment of their unit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any members of the Tenant Services Committee who wish to comment? I believe, Uba, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Catherine, are you asking for tenants to have keys, like extra keys, so when they need to do events or program, they have access, like supervised access, or somebody can supervise and then they can use it? Like, speak to that more, please.
Thank you for the question, Uba. No, what I'm asking is for management to open the door and let us use the room. They are locked. Right now, the mayor has ordered Toronto Community Housing to open these rooms for 4 months with no rules attached, no key, just open those doors. Your tenants have the right to access. I'm asking we consider extending that, as these rooms were intended for tenant use. So what's the barrier? What can we do to maybe pull back a little and allow tenants that unrestricted access?
Thank you.
Thank you. So to management, can somebody speak to that? Is it possible to give tenants that accessibility?
So through the chair, happy to comment on that. We do have a cooling room process over the summer that we would institute, and we have continued to institute over the last several years. And so it wasn't necessarily because the mayor mandated that, so I'm unclear on that comment. But I will say that the comments from the deputant do ring true in some of our communities. We've had security concerns and other reasons why the rooms have remained locked unless there is a specific use of space application. Having said that, I do think this is a topic that we're happy to bring back to the committee and have a more fulsome tenant engagement process before we do so to provide updates. So I think we could certainly commit to coming back in Q3 or Q4 with an updated approach or policy, and we will also ensure we have tenant engagement attached to that to address the concerns raised by the deputant.
Are there any other
Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from members of the committee? Okay, Catherine, if you're still there, I can see you now. You've heard what's being suggested, and I would agree. I haven't heard anything about the second point, which is the solicitation on TCHC buildings, but I'm wondering if we could also perhaps add that to have the staff look at it and come back with a report.
So through the chair, happy to work with probably our legal team to figure out how we approach this, but we can bring a report back to the committee, and I can get back to you on the date and timelines.
Thank you. All right, then, I think that we've obviously taken what you've had to say very seriously, and we'll ensure that there's some discussion with tenant engagement as well as part of that, and we'll have reports back in the future, which is about the most we can do today, I think, but thank you. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Nadia.
Great. Okay, any other comments before I ask for a motion? And I guess we'll have to, it would be a motion, and I'm just making some of this up as I go here, but a motion to approve the 2026 public. Actually, before I ask for that motion, I think I just want to say something, both with regard to the work plan. I have, when it came up in a prior meeting, not at Tenant Services, but I suggested that it would be more appropriate, rather than having us look at our work plans now in February of 2026, when we're already into the year, that this is the sort of thing that ought to be dealt with in the end of the year prior, so that we can have a more fulsome discussion about what should be in these work plans, and have that done and ready to go for the start of the following year, which is what it's all about. So I think that is going to happen, so that next year we'll be having some reports and some discussion, I believe, certainly at the latest, at the last Tenant Services Committee meeting, and if there's anything that needs to go to the board, it would also go to the board then, at their meeting prior to the end of that year too, so that we can start 2026 with a work plan already set and ready to go, rather than doing it now, okay, when we're already at the beginning, well, past the beginning of the year. Okay, do I have any comments about that? But that's something that I had discussed, I guess, behind the scenes.
Yeah, Mary, it's Debbie. We had a similar conversation, as you would recall, at GCHRC.
Right.
So yeah, we absolutely are in support of your recommendation that beginning next fiscal that we begin to do so at the end of this year.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, so to the chair, appreciate the suggestion, and I know that our corporate secretary and governance team have worked on this and have now moved, I believe, the charter review up to the Q3 meeting and then the work plan review into the Q4 meeting. So both of those have moved forward by 1 quarter, and that'll accomplish that, so we can get it done before the calendar year ends.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, in terms of the motion, I guess what I'd be indicating is that, and I may ask staff for some input here, but in approving the 2026 public TSC work plan, we're adding to it these two reports that we're asking for with regard to the use of non-residential areas in the buildings, and a report with regard to solicitation on TCHC building property. And I don't think we have to make a motion about, or maybe we do, but I'll be told, with regard to the timing of it. I assume that can just happen without, or do we need a motion to that as well, in terms of the timing now in the future, in Q3 and Q4 of the TSC?
So if I may, and maybe to Kaylee, typically I suspect we would track these as action items that would come back as reports addressing particular issues. I believe the work plan is more for recurring items that we want to revisit every year. Is that correct?
Correct. I will say the work plans that we've developed for 2026 do incorporate any outstanding action items that were on the action item list when they were developed, as well as any outstanding city council directives. So there are some of those items included in the work plan, but we can take this as direction for the action items list to add those. I think we've got a date for the first item related to use of space, so we can definitely add that to the work plan for that date. And then in relation to the solicitation item, we can take that as an item for the action item list. In addition, I also just wanted to flag that there is an additional report. So The versions of the work plans that you'll see at the board, as we discussed this morning, have some additional notation. There's no difference in the list of items, but they're in discussions with the board chair. She's requested that we identify any differences between the 2025 and 2026 reporting. And so there is one item to flag, and that is just that previously in 2025, there was an in-camera report related to community safety and as well as a public report related to community safety. And the proposal for 2026 is that that will be consolidated into the biannual community safety and well-being report that will be coming halfway through the year to both TSC and board. So just because that item is not captured as on the work plan this year, we just wanted to draw your attention to that. And the board approved that reporting cadence at the December meeting. And so we just wanted to make sure that everybody on TSC was aware of that change.
All right, thank you.
But in
terms of emotion.
terms of a motion, yes, we can reflect it as approving the work plans as amended and referring them to the board. And so we can also identify at the February 17th meeting for the board the additional items that were flagged in today's discussion.
So that all that's necessary then for this committee is to simply have a motion to approve the 2026 public TSC work plan as amended and forward it to the board for its approval.
Correct.
That will capture the discussion today?
Yes.
All right, then, I'm going to ask somebody to make, oh, Dan, did you?
I'll make that motion with the amendment.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Mary,
Yes.
I'll second, but do we not have another deputation on item 8?
On this? I didn't think
Isn't
so, but we could.
Wally-
We have
We only have one deputation on item 6.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I'll second.
Hello?
Mary.
So, good morning, my friends. I'm here. I'm not sure if you.
No, it's not time yet, sorry.
I think you're on the
sorry,
next
okay.
item, okay?
Sorry, no.
All right, just give us a second and we'll be there in a minute. All right, so then, Dan, I'm confused now. Did we have
Dan moved and Debbie is
that's right, you
seconding.
moved the motion to approve the 2026 public TSC work plan as amended and forward it to the board for approval. And then I was looking for a seconder, right? Okay.
Yes.
Debbie, you want to second it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All in favor then? Great, all right, it's then approved. Thanks. All right. Okay, then we're on to item 7, and that is the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity's 2025 Work Plan Performance Appraisal. And I believe Walid, who is here, was just on my screen a minute ago, is a deputant on this matter.
Thank you so much. Am I able to share a presentation that which is a guide for my deputation, please? Just
Give
going
us a
to
minute.
share it.
Give us a second.
Wally, are you able to share from your computer, or do you need to request access?
I am just pressing right now just to try it out. Let me know if I can share it. Okay, I am trying to share the presentation. Window. Okay, I'm able to share it. Can you see it?
Yes.
We can now.
Right.
All
Okay,
right.
my friends, I'll be making a similar deputation to the board, but I thought it will be prudent to share it with this wonderful committee. So I'm just going to go quickly through the data, and then hopefully if there's any questions, we could have it at this committee or at the board meeting. But my deputation is focused on the importance of addressing the eviction crisis that I personally am experiencing, serving folks in the community, supported about almost 20 families with eviction related challenges. And I have about 12 TCHC tenants that I'm supporting right now. And these are the numbers that were released by Toronto Community Housing. This was released on January 5th. If I filed the Freedom of Information request to Tribunals Ontario and received some of that data. So this is all in the presentation that was submitted to members of the committee. So I'm not going to go through everything, but I am going to go through the analysis in the bottom. So from 2020 to 2025, even using TCHC's own data, evictions have exploded, while the number of households have gone down. So evictions from social housing have increased by more than 100% in just 2 years, alongside the persistence of hidden evictions, which I name because this is when family members are coerced and are removed from the lease, and there's informal displacement that never appear in the official statistics. We know that eviction triggers homelessness, family separation, and long-term trauma. And we know that social housing evictions are preventable. Unfortunately, my friends, 2023 was the worst year for TCHC tenants. So we're going to, as housing advocates, we're going to be calling for an immediate citywide moratorium on evictions from social housing. We're going to be asking City Council to take a clear and principled stand against homelessness by implementing an immediate moratorium on evictions from social housing. We are collecting the experiences of tenants through the Empowered Tenant Survey, and this survey is going to be collected between the month of February until March 16th. We have 17 questions in 13 languages, and for those who that fill out the survey, we'll be giving out $50 raffle prizes. And I just want to emphasize that social housing is intended to provide permanent stability for people with the lowest incomes and the highest needs. Increasingly, however, it's functioning as a pipeline to homelessness. And we know that's not a failure of tenants, it's a failure of policy. We do need to update our policies. And I want to highlight the important recommendations made by the Ombudsman, specifically the tragic death of a senior highlighted in the Al Gosling inquiry as a stark reminder of what is at stake. We know eviction is not an administrative outcome. It's a life-altering event that can have fatal consequences, particularly for seniors, people with disabilities, and those living in poverty. So what's the summary of the data that I just shared on the screen? Well, we know that 42% of TCHC tenants identify as Black. And based on the data collected through a FIPA disclosure, accessed on January 22nd, 2026, we know 2023 was a bad year for tenants, TCHC tenants. It was the highest post-moratorium evictions on record. According to the data we secured from Tribunals Ontario, those 624 evictions. But what was released by TCHC was 162. That's a 285% higher than what was publicly reported. We know that in 2023, we had the lowest use of mediation or ADR. Only 77 applications were resolved through mediation, including consent orders. This marks the lowest use of alternative resolution mechanisms following the lifting of the eviction moratorium during the same year that evictions reached their peak. We also know that we have a reporting gap. In 2025, TCHC released that from January 1st to October 31st, it was 391 households that were evicted. The data that we got from Tribunals Ontario contradicts that. It's 541, and the difference is 150 additional households, which is a 38% higher than publicly was reported. We also want to emphasize that before the racial equity context, but before I do that, I want to say that tribunals data indicates substantially more eviction outcomes than reflected in public reporting. And the reason why I'm moving on to this really important theme, which is the racial equity context, is that we need to provide and collect, but provide this data publicly, specifically race disaggregated eviction data, because without this eviction data, it is not possible to assess whether eviction outcomes disproportionately affect Black tenants. And given the scale of the discrepancies and Toronto's documented racial housing inequities, transparent and disaggregated reporting is essential to understand potential systemic anti-Black impacts. So in summary, the overall findings are as follows. 2023 was the worst post-moratorium year for TCHC tenants, with 624 evictions reported. Evictions were 205% higher than publicly reported for 2023. Partial 2025 reporting reflects a 38% discrepancy. Mediation and ADR use declined during the period of highest eviction impact, and the absence of erased disaggregated eviction data limits accountability and equity analysis. So I'm requesting this committee to work with housing advocates, the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, and members of council to implement a full moratorium on evictions while we better appreciate the reasons as to why we have such a spike in evictions from social housing. Those were my comments, and I thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Dan? Okay.
Morning. Thank you for your presentation. We haven't met. I've spent over 40 years representing private sector tenants against private sector landlords who basically don't give a damn except whether the rent gets paid. I came on this board knowing that there is a anti-eviction slant, but also realizing occasionally after you try everything, it happens. So I've been encouraged by that, and that's one of the reasons I asked to be on this board. But you can be assured that I personally will keep my good eye on this particular issue, that we are treating every single tenant with the utmost respect and dignity, and keeping a roof over the head of every single person that we can keep a roof over their head. Any improvements to the system, we have the housing commissioner here. We have other people who are very directly looking at this issue, and I know we'll take it seriously. I take it seriously, and I take my role as the board member to keep an eye on this issue. It's one of the top issues is to keep people housed, and frankly, we need to house more people. That's another focus. Thank you.
Sorry, Waleed, you have your hand up.
I just want to say thank you for that commitment. I think as a social housing provider that is a subsidiary of the City of Toronto, it is I argue one eviction is too many. And I do understand that sometimes there's evictions. For example, when a member of the community is arrested, charged of a serious crime and convicted, and they're going to go to prison, that unit should be made available to others. But even in cases of charges, the courts usually require that the community member or our neighbor is actually housed so that they are able to complete their probation requirements, be reintegrated into society. So I think when we unhouse the most vulnerable tenants, we are actually creating challenges across the board, across the system, whether it's our healthcare costs, whether it's costs related to incarceration. So I think it's really important that our board and this committee take this data seriously. And also, I think the governance needs to hold all of us accountable to what's been publicly reported. We just had a scandal at Toronto Police Services that has undermined the public trust. I want us to build a foundation where when data is shared by Toronto Community Housing, it's not challenged in any way. And finding this information from Tribunals Ontario undermines that public trust. So I'm hoping we can work together to find out why Tribunals Ontario or the Landlord Tenant Board have different numbers than what's been shared publicly by Toronto Community Housing.
Thank you. Thank you. Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you, Walid. I appreciated your presentation when I received it. And I wanted to echo Dan's statements about our commitment as a board to ensure all are housed and adequately housed within TCHC. Walid, you talked about your recommendation in terms of a moratorium on all evictions. Of course, you provided a caveat where of course, there are times when we need to evict. However, have you been speaking to people on council? Is this something that's coming forward that the board should be aware of?
I have spoken to several members of council who are deeply concerned about the data and are looking to find solutions. And I'm hoping that members of city council who serve on the TCHC board could bring these items forward at future board meetings. But I will be working with other housing advocates to make those deputations at council and meet with members of council privately to underscore the need for moratorium right now. We all know city council will go on a recess after, during the municipal elections. And what I worry about is ongoing evictions that will get worse without us appreciating the impact. And we can't appreciate the impact without understanding the data and most importantly, the disaggregated race-based data. 40% of folks living in 42%, let me correct myself, 42% of folks living in social housing are Black, identify as Black. Most of the eviction cases that I have dealt with are Black seniors, Black women, single mothers, and it's truly disturbing to witness the human toll of tenants who are evicted at who had in my opinion, no fault. They did nothing wrong except for not show up to the landlord and tenant board hearing, and because of that, they can't even get back to social housing because they're requested to pay $35,000, for example, in one case, $35,000 in damages when TCHC has commercial insurance liability insurance to cover that. And basically, it means that it's a permanent ban for that family because they're on ODSP, Ontario Disability. So they can't pay $35,000 to get back on a waiting list.
I saw that case, and I was glad that it had been surfaced, and hoping to get some answers. Miriam, I have questions for staff.
Yes, go ahead.
Just in terms of the discrepancy between the numbers that we released publicly and the numbers from Tribunal Ontario, I was trying to figure out if it was because of different categories or different definitions of what eviction means, but it'll be good to hear from staff why such a significant discrepancy, including 2025, which Walid has suggested is 38% underreporting. Or discrepancy between the numbers between Tribunal Ontario and our numbers at TCHC.
Thank you. I don't know who wishes to comment. John?
Yeah, so to the chair, happy to address the question about the statistics and would also like to speak on the evictions process in general. To start with the statistics, any suggestion that we're not providing the correct information here is inaccurate. There are differences in how numbers are calculated and tracked and reported. You will find numbers that indicate how many times a filing is made to the landlord-tenant board. That's a higher number, obviously. You'll find numbers in terms of how many orders are actually issued by the landlord and tenant board. That's, I believe, the number that was reported by the deputant, but I'm not certain. And then you'll find the numbers that we report, which are the numbers of evictions that are actually truly carried out. And it shouldn't be surprising that each one of those numbers is lower than the previous one, right? There are all kinds of steps in between each stage where things can be resolved in a positive way, and often are. So it is true that we we file for a certain number of evictions, and many of those are resolved before the landlord-tenant board can issue an order. It's also true that the landlord-tenant board will issue an order to evict, and then we internally will choose not to carry that out, and instead will act with the tenant to resolve the issue in the meantime. So there are discrepancies between the numbers, but they're fully explainable.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to comment? Staff? Dan, yes.
Just want to ask the deputant if they've had any interaction with the local community legal clinic, which I believe would be neighborhood legal services for your area. Have you been talking to them?
Yes, my friend, I actually served on their board of the neighborhood legal services, and I have been in contact with many legal aid clinics. And sadly, many legal aid clinics do not represent the most vulnerable tenants at the landlord and tenant board.
I'm aware of the
they're-
weaknesses of the legal
Yeah.
aid system, but I just wondered if you had contact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I don't know if Melanie Martin, who's our interim commissioner of housing equity, is here. I don't know if there's anything you wish to say, Melanie?
I guess I just wish to say that OCHE is really committed to ensuring successful tenancies and working with tenants to address the barriers they're facing before they have to go to the landlord-tenant board. And I think if there's any room for any more work to be done after that process, TCHC does refer cases back to us after tenants have gone to the LTB, but there could be instances where we need to look at that and see if there's more of a role for OCHE to play, and we'll definitely have those conversations with TCHC.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Yes, John.
Thanks, and to the chair, I just wanted to comment generally about evictions at TCHC as well. I can assure you that management shares the concerns around evictions in social housing and TCHC specifically. It is absolutely a tool of last resort within the organization. I also want to point out that evictions from Toronto Community Housing are exceedingly rare and continue to be exceedingly rare. Less than 1% of households face eviction. And there are numerous academic studies out there looking at rates of evictions across different housing providers. We've been in touch with some of those studies recently that show that we are not just lower than the private market that the committee member pointed out earlier, which tends to hover around the 7% range, but we're actually at the bottom of the list when you look at nonprofit organizations and social housing providers across the province as well. So I certainly share and understand the concern about the impacts when evictions happen, but I want to be clear that it's exceedingly rare. And unfortunately, there are situations that arise in Toronto Community Housing that do require us to pursue eviction. And those examples include things like assaults and physical violence, major criminal activity, major property damage that has a significant impact on other tenants within the building, serious issues of fraud, and in some cases, but rarely, issues of significant arrears. And I will also point out, we entered into over 2,000 repayment agreements with tenants last year, right? And I think the number of evictions for arrears was somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 or so. So to suggest that we're not trying to work with tenants to resolve these issues is simply not accurate. And even in the case, on those rare cases where we do have to take something forward to the landlord-tenant board to pursue an eviction, TCHC is always committed to significantly exceeding the requirements of the Residential Tenancies Act as well. We follow a board-approved policy in terms of how we proceed with evictions. We issue communications in multiple languages over multiple channels before taking things forward. We always make referrals to legal assistance, and we always make referrals to community supports as well. And even after all of those steps, of course, the case has to still be made at the landlord-tenant board. So I just want to impress upon the committee that we don't take evictions lightly. We understand the impact that that has on individual households. And we're committed to a process that is fair for the households affected, but also for the greater community and other tenants living within the building. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then. I'm looking at the motion that is being suggested here for us, and it's really getting back to, in fact, the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity's 2025 Work Plan Performance Appraisal, and approving that and the recommendations therein, which then will go to the board and we'll be asking them to approve it. Is that, sorry? Yes. Pardon me? Oh, Uba, sorry, I didn't. Okay, Uba, go ahead. Yes. My apologies.
No worries. I just echo what Sean said. I know it's not good to compare things, but I manage a housing project for where I work during the day. And to compare other housing providers, we're doing a great job, but it still that does not mean we're perfect. And as my other colleagues say, we are committed to improve things. And I was thinking one thing that maybe can help us and improve things is if we look into um, the areas that we talked about in the past and how we say if it's more than 5,000 or 10,000, then we're going to look into if we can waive or if we can, knock half of it out. Maybe that could be a solution. So I just want to say that, but I agree with everyone, especially Sean. And we're doing everything that we can, and we'll continue to do that.
Right. Thank you very much, Ruben. I think I can say as the chair of this committee that we're, as a committee, like speaking for everyone, and I hope you agree, but I think that obviously we take the issue of evictions very seriously, and we don't want to see evictions either unless it's absolutely, absolutely necessary, and we will continue to work towards that goal. And I too, I will just say that I have been impressed with the efforts that are made to prevent evictions and the efforts of OCHE, I'm using the short form there, to also ensure that the eviction, if at all possible, doesn't have to happen. But, we're all human and things happen, but we'll continue to work as hard as we can to ensure we can do our very best with regard to this issue and have as few evictions as possible. So having said that, and I think hopefully the committee's not going to take issue with what I said on their behalf, I'm wondering then can I have a motion then to approve and recommend that the board approve the recommendations of the report and send it off to the board for their approval? Yes, okay. Who wants to make that? Thank you, Uba. Is there a seconder? Marcel? Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion is passed. Thank you. All right, and thank you very much, Waleed, for your deputation on this issue. Then we're going forward to item 8, and we will start there with item 8, which is the community gardens policy. And I know we have a couple of deputations on that one. I see Catherine, you're all set to go? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I know that the management report referenced that garden at 133 Broadway Avenue, which was a very unfortunate situation where the garden had been there for 10 years and then for a variety of reasons was since removed for safety reasons by Toronto Community Housing. And that building was subsequently awarded $50,000 of Section 37 funds to rebuild their community garden. So I hope it's fabulous. In response to that ombudsman inquiry about the current practices for community gardens, we see now that management has created a formal tenant gardening policy, and we know that they failed to consult with tenants. They just whipped it up. And then this committee, thank you very much, directed management to go back and consult with tenants and then bring forward the final product. And here we are today. So during the tenant consultations, tenants did not see the procedures or the punitive action that Toronto Community Housing would take against tenants if they breached the gardening agreement, nor did tenants ever see the actual gardening agreement. So words matter. I think that management went a bit too far. The sample of the breaches for tenant gardeners is a bit much. And the procedures are very controlling and somewhat offensive. And I'm not sure if these are written more for inmates than for volunteer tenant gardeners who are beautifying your property. Tenants are already on CCTV camera, and the process appears to be more like policing tenant gardeners, planting tulips and tomatoes, than it does to be encouraging, interaction, socialization, and tenant engagement. What was not provided to the committee today or ever seen by tenants themselves is the actual gardening agreement that will be a legally binding contract for tenants to sign. Recommendation 1, garden agreement should be distributed to Tenant Service Committee members and added to the meeting materials on the Toronto Community Housing website as soon as possible. A gardening policy cannot be one size fits all. Oh, we keep trying. Consideration should be given on community size and plots available. A 3-year plot assignment may mean that tenants in smaller communities could wait years for the opportunity to garden. Like all good inmates, permitted time outdoors, Toronto Community Housing has now established a gardening curfew of 7 p.m. Some tenants, early risers, water in the wee hours of the morning. Others may wish to water after dinner. Under the new policy, it would be a major breach of the gardening agreement to do either. Nowhere in this policy or procedure did we finally address consideration of tenants living in ground floor units. Management is well aware this has been a problem for years, and it starts when Toronto Community Housing allows a community garden to be planted right smack in front of someone's bedroom window on the ground floor. When tenants complain, they are told Toronto Community Housing can do whatever they want. Tenant engagement does not trump the Residential Tenancy Act, and I would hope that staff would know that. A tenant's right to reasonable enjoyment of their rental unit, ensuring a peaceful, private, quiet environment free from substantial interference and harassment. Currently, tenants have to fight Toronto Community Housing, or they have to take them to the Landlord and Tenant Board for the right to reasonable enjoyment of their unit. This is not acceptable, and it must be addressed. We can't possibly grandfather in something that violates a tenant's right to reasonable enjoyment of their unit. To that end, recommendation 2, any existing garden adjacent to a tenant unit on the ground floor should be moved to a more appropriate location on the property in advance of the 2026 gardening season. Transparency and fairness matter. The policy states the CSCs, the staff, will determine the plot allocation, but the procedures say a tenant volunteer is going to help them, and the optics do not look good. So I don't think plot assignment is complicated, and I think we could even make it fun, and it should be done publicly in front of the tenants. Perhaps I can simplify the process. Recommendation number 3, put plot numbers in one hat and tenant names in another hat, and draw one of each. Subject to change only on the basis of need for accommodation for tenants with disabilities. Please consider some of these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there will be an opportunity for questions, but I believe there's another deputation which we should hear first, I think, from Veronica. Is she on the, I'm not seeing her on the screen. Veronica?
I believe she's calling user 1. So Veronica, if you're on the line, you're able to begin your deputation.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'd like to thank the urban gardeners for letting me participate in this gardening policy. It was nice to hear what some other communities are having with their gardening quests. The 3-year rule will not work in smaller communities. People who have been gardening from day one are not going to give up their plot after 3 years. They'll continue to plant and in the plot they consider theirs. The 3-year rule may work in larger communities as long as the community agrees. In my community, there's 20 plots and 18 gardeners, and reduces every year due to a number of vandalisms and thefts from the plots. The fact that they need major repair also needs to be addressed. The tenants who choose to take plots should assume the costs. I took a plot 2 years ago and bought everything myself. I never got anything from the garden because people stole it. I threw it into the garbage because I wasn't going to do the work for other people to steal my stuff. There should be a camera around the gardening area to catch people taking stuff that isn't theirs, which the gardener should be giving because it's their plot. Then you'll know it's legal. A lot of these people take stuff because they think they have the right. I don't know what they think the gardeners are doing. However, it was very disheartening, and I'll never do that again. I raked my garden every time I left to see footprints who was coming. And there was rabbits at the bottom because I had less lettuce for them. And people tracks all around my tomato plants that were taken. This was there's some discussion about balcony gardening. I would like to know the status on that proposal. Balcony gardening would be good for many people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. I'm sorry you had that bad experience. Yeah. All right. Committee members? Questions? No? All right. Maybe I'll ask the staff to report.
So through the chair, we actually have a short presentation, so if I'm okay to cue that, and we can address some of the questions throughout that presentation.
Terrific. Thank
So community gardens continue to be an important part of tenant well-being, supporting food security, connection, and community pride. Following the Ombudsman's 2024 recommendations and extensive tenant consultations, the updated policy strengthens governance, equity, and clarity in how garden spaces are managed across TCHC. The policy sets clearer expectations, improving access, and supporting consistent practices across the portfolio. With that, I'll turn it over to Pablo Vivanco, Director of Tenant Engagement and Community Development, and members of the Toronto Urban Growers Unit to walk us through the policy updates and next steps.
Good morning. So again, my name is Pablo Vivanco, Director of Tenant Engagement and Community Development, and I'm joined by Rhonda Tatel-Payne and James Coons from the Toronto Urban Growers, who will speak a little bit about the consultations that we had across our communities, across our regions in the latter part of 2025, and some of the themes that came out through that. Go to the next slide. But just as a background, how we got here, obviously it was already raised, the unfortunate incident that happened at 133 Broadway, which prompted in 2024, this was addressed at our board as well as City Council, and a recommendation, some directives coming from the Ombuds, to produce a permanent community gardens policy that initially was set to be in place for the gardening season in 2025. However, given that Toronto Community Housing began a new tenant engagement system in 2025, it was communicated with the Ombuds and others involved that TCHC would start drafting the policy through the engagement system that was implemented in 2025. So we began engaging our city partners, particularly Parks and Recreation, which is how the partnership with Toronto Urban Growers occurred, as well as other housing providers in Canada around their gardening policies, which led to our consultations, which I'll pass over to Rhonda and James to give an overview of. Go to the next slide, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo and other TCH staff for inviting us here today, and thank you to the committee on behalf of my colleague James. We were very pleased to participate in conjunction with the TCH staff on the consultation process. It's always great to connect with gardeners directly. We held a number of online and in-person feedback sessions, and then an online survey, followed up by a report back session where people got a chance to meet in person and respond to our recommendations. Now, I will say people are very passionate about gardening, and they have very strong and varied opinions. But when we presented our recommendations, there were very few contentious issues. There was a good, solid agreement, which we were pleased to see. What really came through clearly, as you've heard today, is that there aren't enough garden spaces to meet the demand, and tenants are frustrated with lengthy wait lists. So these are the 5 four themes that mainly came out of the session. So I'll give you a couple of details on these. Of course, transparency, clarity, and fairness came up a number of times. Training for staff is listed here partly because tenants wanted to make sure that staff really understand why it's important that community gardens are functioning strongly, why everyone has access to them because of the benefits to the individuals and to the TCH communities. And in the hopes of gaining more responsive and constructive relationships. But they were also really clear that the level of staff commitment can really make or break a community garden project. They had examples of both really positive interactions that they credited the staff and ones that they would like to change. The point about training for tenants, certainly there is lots of scope for involving outside organizations to support tenants, but there's also a wealth of knowledge and skills among TCH residents. And so the tenants were really clear they wanted more opportunities for exchanges so they can learn from each other. As far as the governance structure goes, this is where gardeners agreed to differ somewhat. They agreed that there should be a balance of really well-structured policies, very clear policies, with some flexibility to adapt to the needs of different communities and different types of gardens. They really wanted to see a clarity of roles, both for TCH staff, for any outside contractors that may be involved, and also what tenants are allowed to do, and basically knowing who to go to for information. As far as documentation goes, they really requested documents that are easy for tenants to use and are readily available, and so that staff have access to them as well. The resources, all of these are useful, of course. The primary resource that tenants are concerned about is access to water, and this is universal for gardening everywhere. It's the most critical resource. The other thing I'd like to say about resources is that, of course, TCH can be an excellent provider of resources, but tenants also are interested in accessing these resources themselves. And so they're just looking for open, clear processes that allow them to do that. Accessibility came up in a number of ways. Providing accessible spaces if needed is obviously an important piece of it. And also making sure that the people who need those adaptive spaces have first priority to access them. The other message that they wanted to convey was that TCH can be proactive about identifying people who need accessible spaces, who want to garden, because sometimes there are instances of people who need those spaces that don't hear about opportunities to access the garden. And so now we are working with tenants to update the community garden manual to provide more supportive information, both about how to do good gardening processes, but also good people processes, good decision making, so that we reduce the number of conflicts as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. So as you can see, we will move on to the next slide. From these 6 virtual and in-person sessions, as well as the citywide forum to report back on the consultations, we tried to really include as many of the things that came up into a new policy and procedure that would address a lot of what we heard. So in part, one of the things that we began with is what the scope, what is this policy going to cover, and contemplating current uses, as well as some future uses and types of gardens, and also not wanting to complicate things that do work where where people are already working or already doing things, particularly on their own sites, balconies, their front yards, where that's applicable. So scope was very important, and that this would cover properties owned and operated by Toronto Community Housing. So currently we have 66 gardens across our regions that would be covered under this policy, and hopefully that number will grow. We obviously wanted alignment with our strategic priorities and policies and strategies that we are invested in, including alignment with the Tenant Charter, alignment with the City of Toronto's Confronting Anti-Black Racism Strategy and Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan, the Black Food Sovereignty Action Plan, and prioritizing AODA in not only our communications, but in the built form of current gardens and in the processes that we're undertaking. We wanted to ensure that the policy captured the trying to capture an appropriate amount of structure. So this is where we've embedded gardening committees in specific types of gardens and volunteer coordinators to help act as liaisons between the community and some of our staff, and improving processes. So where we've talked about terms for plot allotments, there would be annual renewals through the signing of a gardening agreement, a defined process for beginning new gardens that would take into account and really ensure that sites are appropriate, that they're not being set up to fail, that they're not being set up to act as a hindrance to community cohesion. Again, the allotment terms, having seasonal timelines that can work both for tenants as well as for some of our staff, repairs and construction protocols, as well as specifying partnerships and what gardening resources can be brought to bear to support communities, as well as what tenants themselves can be expected to be bringing if they're interested in participating in gardening. Go on to the next slide. So this is what a general annual year will look like. Obviously, in terms of timelines, obviously this year as a new year, as well as one where we're already well into it, there will be some alignment and grandfathering that will have to take place. However, we are looking at a process where folks will be asked to submit their applications and get their gardening agreements signed during the period of February and March. And we're looking forward to a May 1st start date. As Rhonda outlined, we are currently working on preparing the manual as well as online forms. I know that that was addressed in one of the deputations. We obviously want the forms and the agreements to be online and to be user-friendly, so that folks don't have to sift through many pages, but also so that they can have this information readily accessible and they can fill those out at their leisure. And to not make them overly onerous. We obviously also wanted to contemplate deadlines for folks to be able to begin gardening to make sure that we can maximize the plots that are available, and to specify an end of gardening season and the obligations, the responsibilities of tenant gardeners to ensure that, that everything is cleaned up at the end of the gardening season as well as throughout. Okay, so already went through that, so we'll go to the last slide. Right now, the next steps are requesting approval. Then in March, we will be completing the garden manual, publishing all the forms, and producing user-friendly materials as part of a training for tenants as well as staff, and implementing, moving towards a May 1st gardening season. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadia, do you have anything further to say about this?
So through the chair, the only piece I would add, in addition to the robust process we did to get here, there is a commitment, and it was mentioned through the community gardening manual, and continuing to work with tenants to have tools that makes it easier to navigate and understand, because we know this is a bit lengthy and potentially cumbersome to some, and I think the commitment is to making it as accessible as possible. With respect to some of the comments made by the deputants, including balcony gardening as well as ground floor gardening, it's something that I will take back with the team to look at whether we could incorporate some of those ideas moving forward. But really good suggestions, and we're very open to modifying where we can.
Thank you. Committee members. Any comments, questions?
It'd be just good to see, the progress that's been made on this. I remember the incident that led to this conversation. And I agree with Nadia that there are some good recommendations coming from tenants around balcony and first floor gardening. Hoping that some of the more pessimistic expectations won't come through. I agree, it seems cumbersome, but I think it, on the face of it, seems very fair. It'll take a lot of work in terms of implementation of the process, but I think good systems are being put in place.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments of committee members? No? All right, then. I think I would echo, I guess, what Nadia said, and with regard to the points that have been made by the deputants today, and taking those back and seeing what you can do to incorporate some of those or whatever. I know, and I wanted to say, I know there's been, having read through, I think, every piece of paper that I was given with regard to the policy, and there's obviously been a tremendous amount of work done on this, and I would say thank you to all of those who participated. But obviously, you know, it's a new policy. There are going to be some issues, and I think we've heard some very constructive comments from the deputants today. And to them, I'll say that Nadia has indicated that she will take those comments back and see what can be done. All right. So, having said that, nothing further. Okay, then on that basis, that there will be further discussion at the staff level, and in keeping in mind what was said today, I'm going to ask if I could have a motion to approve and recommend that the board approve the recommendations in the report. Somebody want to? Debbie, thank you. You're moving it. A seconder? Upa, all in favor? Great. Thank you. Motion approved. Thank you, and thank you very much to the deputants. It's a lot of material you've gone through, I'm sure, before you made the deputation, and I appreciate your comments. Okay, we can move on then to 8B, which is the Violence Reduction Program closeout report, and I believe there is a deputant. Oh, he's here. Okay, Miguel. Thank you to, I see you're getting ready to leave, but thank you to the urban gardeners or urban growers, people who were here. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's fine. Go ahead, Miguel.
All right, can you hear me? Wonderful. So, good morning, everybody. So here I am talking on item 8, the close-up of the Violence Reduction Program, and we're moving all the items that I'm going to be listing, hopefully, to the new well-being program that is put on motion in TCHC to deal with our state of violence in our communities. So in front of you, I have a poster of the Region Park Safety Network. I am a member for the last 10 years. One of the burning questions that I always ask staff that attends the meetings, like you can see the logo, TCHC, is we have a 21-year-old problem in Region Park, phases 1 and 2. There are 5 properties without CCTV cameras on the upper floors. As you know, we have multi-units, and those are found on phase 1. There are 3 properties without CCTV cameras. And phase 2, there are 2 properties without CCTV cameras on the upper floors, except for the lobby and the garage. So when we talk about safety of residents, I think we should be emphasizing the need to deal with this 21-year-old problem that it has never been done. It has never been resolved. Hopefully this committee will take seriously the issue of safety of the residents. So having the CCTV cameras installed on those 5 properties will go a long way. So here's Mr. Vidal Chabanes. I like that the story on the Toronto Star, where he says that is important. I agree with him, but also the surrounding issues about why we have problems, in our communities. One of them is the irritating noises that we are facing with on a regular basis. I have spoken about this matter at the Toronto Police Services Board. I have spoken at the Toronto Public Health. I have spoken countless times here at TCHC, but a few action has been done with regards to this problem. If we really want to ensure that the well-being of the residents, we need to tackle this emerging problem of noises, because it affects the life of residents who have lived in some buildings for 30, 40 years, and now newcomers are coming in and they are staying awake all night, versus those who are used to a routine like myself. Like coming to work here at City Hall is one of the things I do, but I need my sleep. So if I'm asleep, how am I able to come to work? So here's my solution for you guys. Soundproof of units. That will be the best solution that the Housing Secretariat and the Home and TCHC can put forward to address the noises that we are affected by the newcomers in our buildings. Soundproofing will reduce our agony and pain that we are facing with on a regular basis. I've been promised that Gerard and River will have the first TCHC unit with soundproofing panels. I'm still waiting for it. So one of the challenges that you guys are having in 2026, and thank you, Wally, for that data that he shows us with regards to non-arrears, is Bill 10 and Bill Schedule 8. We'll see the outcome of this new direction from the province to the landlords, with the direction to deal with particular units where narcotics are being sold out of our units, that you have been able to solve it over time, a long time, and we have kind of being invaded by these individuals in our communities. Another issue of concern to me is that currently there is a EKI FOB audit. Most residents know me because I'm a man of action. I put videos on YouTube. They want to know, how is this process going? Who is in charge of it? Is it a third party? Is it CSU? Is it management? Nobody knows it. Nobody seems to know it. So perhaps an update on the FOB audit will be important to know. So Walid gave us a great presentation today. Walid emphasized that in 2023, it was the worst year for evictions. I am one of those residents who was served with an N6 notice in 2023 because of the issue of noises. So in conclusion, my hopes is that the wellness plan that you are having presented at the board in December will help to deal with mediation, conflict and resolution. That program right now is unfunded. Thank you so much. We need that very bad.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Are there any questions of Miguel? No? All right, thank you. Nadia, is there anything you wish to say?
So I can say a couple of opening remarks and then open it up to any questions from the committee to myself and my colleagues. So this item provides the formal closeout report on the Violence Reduction Program after 6 years of implementation across 11 communities. As the report outlines, the VRP delivered meaningful impacts, including strengthening community partnerships, supporting youth and tenant-led initiatives, improving cross-system coordination, and contributing to long-term reductions in violent incidents across many of the participating sites. At the same time, the experience of delivering the VRP has made clear the limitations of a site-specific, resource-intensive model, particularly in the face of staffing constraints, shifting community needs, and the need for broader consistency across the portfolio. The report reflects on our learnings and details how the most effective elements of the Violence Reduction Program are now being integrated into our new community safety and well-being strategy. That strategy is designed to give us a more scalable, prevention-focused, and coordinated approach, maintaining a consistent presence in communities while strengthening service navigation, integrated team responses, and multi-sector partnerships. I'm joined today by Dr. Vidal Chavans, our Senior Director of Community Safety, and Arsema Berhani, Director of Programs and Partnerships, and we're happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Thank you. I know this is simply an item that we're receiving for information, but are there any questions of members of the committee? Okay. Not seeing any then, I think that the motion with regard to this item is simply to receive the Violence Reduction Program closeout report for our information. So anybody wish to make a motion of that, for that? Yes. Thank you. Marcel, seconder? Dan, thank you. All in favor? Okay, passed. Thank you. All right then, going on to number 9, and there is a presentation, I believe, with regard to the tenant economic opportunities secured through revitalization, and that is going to be by Eve, I think. Over there, sorry. Yes, okay. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of Tenant Service Committee. We're pleased to present our 2025 report on tenant economic opportunities secured through Revite. Revitalization is core. It's not simply about rebuilding housing. It's about rebuilding opportunity. Through our development program, we're not only delivering new homes and infrastructure, but also leveraging our procurement processes, developer partnerships, and construction activity to secure meaningful economic outcomes for our tenants. These outcomes include employment, training, scholarships, and pathway to long-term financial stability. This annual report provides transparency and accountability on how we are performing against the community economic development targets established throughout our Revite agreements, including the 2025 targets that were previously set, the outcomes that we have achieved, the demographic impact of those outcomes, as well as the progress we have made on the 15 recommendations that previously endorsed by TSC and the board. We're proud to report that in 2025, we have exceeded our annual targets, securing 259 community economic development opportunities for 231 tenants, significantly surpassing our goal of 180 opportunities. This outcome were achieved through structured collaboration with our development partners, employment service agencies, trade union, and city stakeholders. They reflect a maturing model, one that's increasingly data-driven, tenant-informed, and performance monitored. However, this work is operationally complex, and it requires intake processes, employment engagement, follow-up supports, and ongoing monitoring to ensure opportunity translate to sustained outcomes. I will now turn it over to William Mendels, our Director of Program Delivery, and will lead the implementation of our CED commitment through all the Revite sites, and will walk the committee through the 2025 results, including scholarships, employment, training outcomes, and progress on the recommendations. Over to you, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. If we could kindly just go to the next slide. One more slide, please. Okay, so as Eve walked us through, our targets for 2025, which were presented to the TSC and the board, included securing approximately 180 opportunities for tenants. And in order to achieve that, our teams aim to engage at least 200 tenants to connect them to CED, Community Economic Development Opportunities, which included at least 50 scholarships, 80 jobs, and 50 tenants receiving formal training. In 2025, last year, the teams engaged close to 260 tenants, which were supported to access various economic development opportunities, which included 58 scholarships awarded to tenants, 114 jobs secured by tenants, and 87 tenants completing a formal training. This enabled a lot of economic development activity to take place in the community. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into scholarships. So altogether, 80 tenants applied for scholarships, of which 80% received support from staff or agencies to complete their application. 58 scholarships were awarded through developer funding with a total value of $188,000. And of the scholarship recipients that provided demographic data, it indicated that 57% of the recipients were women, 88% were from identified as BIPOC, 46% identified as Black, 8% as 2S LGBTQ+, and 7% had a disability. And 66% of the tenants were awarded scholarships for university courses and 34% for a college or a technical training program. In the previous report, I also just would like to highlight that there was a concern from the committee about engaging applicants who were not successful in securing an award. And I'm pleased to inform the committee through the report that staff followed up with tenants who were unsuccessful in previous years and supported them to access scholarships in the 2025 scholarship cycle and to access other scholarship programs in Toronto. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a deeper dive into employment. So there are 114 jobs secured by tenants. 22 of those jobs were full-time in construction, with 80% being with the unionized trade. So, and within the trades, just over half of the construction jobs lasted 6 months or longer and continued when work was completed on the original site, and the tenant was able to sustain employment on a different site. The average construction wage was approximately $30 an hour. And this is, I highlight the continuation of employment from going from the original site to a different site with the same employer. It just speaks to the level of support provided in terms of preparing tenants to access and sustain their employment. 10 of the jobs were either professional, administrative, or technical, and these jobs were mainly full-time and paid an average wage of $22 an hour. And then of the 32 tenants who secured either a construction or a PAT job, 22 of them completed a survey which indicated that 41% were female, 86% identified as BIPOC, 45% Black, and 36% of the respondents reporting having a disability. In addition, there were 77 jobs secured through job fairs and through referrals with local employment service providers such as Wood Green Community Services, Youth Employment Services, the Neighborhood Group, Toronto Employment and Social Services, Apple Grove Community Center, and many more. So those 77 jobs speak to the varied employment aspirations that people have living in TCHC, and not everyone wants to get into the trades, and we facilitate access to various employment opportunities in partnership with community agencies. Next slide, please. So in the report, we'd like to highlight a few key programs that have really driven forward training for our tenants. One is the Moving Towards Opportunity program hosted by the Daniels Corporation, which provided 21 tenants with a 4-month training program and 2-month paid full-time employment placement in professional, administrative, and technical jobs. And then our Creating Real Apprenticeships for Toronto program, also known as CRAFT, which engaged 12 tenants in a 4-month pre-apprenticeship carpentry program with employment placements with the Carpenters Local 27's affiliated contractors. These programs help young people get access into professional jobs and the trades. And this is both these programs have been done in partnership with Daniels Corporation, who has continued to make significant investments in the Regent Park community, and they continue to do so. And we hope to continue these programs in the upcoming years as well. Also, our developer partner, Tridel, through their Bolt Foundation, we leveraged career exploration programs, mainly focused in the trades and engineering. In last year, over 30 tenants participated in career exploration sessions through the Days of Discovery hosted by the Bolt Foundation. Next slide, please. Also in the report, there was 15 recommendations presented to the Tenant Services Committee and the board. These recommendations were based on consultation with developers, employers, agencies, and tenants. I'm pleased to report back that significant progress has been made on all of the recommendations. They're all in action. Most of the recommendations have been implemented but require continuous implementation to sustain the momentum that needs to be gained to achieve the long-term goals. And then within our focus for 2026 will be to continue partnerships to develop increased access to pre-apprenticeship programs, so that way the tenants can get access to the trades. Work with tenants and developers and city staff to develop and refine monitoring and evaluation processes, and connect with tenants who were laid off in 2025 or in upcoming months, and connect them with current and future opportunities. And then one of our other major areas of focus will be supporting tenants in their entrepreneurial efforts to create businesses or leverage business opportunities through TCHC or through the revitalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Members of the committee, are there any questions, staff? Dan.
I have two questions. One is, will there be some sort of check down the road, say in 2 years, with the people that you've been so successful with? Say, how's it going? And have you still the same job? Have you maybe advanced? Any kind of a checkup 2 or 3 years down the road when? The second question I have, I'll wait till the answer on that one.
Through the chair, so staff are working with tenants to gauge the tenant experience and ensure that they are hopefully on path to securing a long-term opportunity to achieve our goal of financial and housing stability. So that report and feedback will come back to Tenant Services Committee in a subsequent year. We plan on doing that every 3 to 5 years to do a more, to be able to engage and provide data on the tenant experience over a longer period of time.
Did you say 3 to 5?
Yeah, yes, 3 to 5 years. So
maybe it would be 2, but we'll leave it to you. My other question, if you, the slides, page 3 slide. Maybe I could probably work without it. There was 258, that's it, 259 CED opportunities secured by 231 tenants. So I'll ask the question, what's the other 28?
So there's, so 2 things happen. Some tenants secure multiple opportunities, and we do have approximately 11% of the people engaged have not received an opportunity yet. They're what I would consider in queue to receive or complete an opportunity, whether it be a scholarship, a training opportunity, or an employment placement.
So they may secure something in the future, but haven't yet.
That is correct. So they have been engaged by staff, but they haven't completed, they haven't secured an opportunity yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? Debbie?
Just briefly, and I love the reports like this. Do we have a sense? I know that you're saying in construction jobs, people stay on average of 6 months. Do we have any sense, anecdotally or not, of folks being able to then make a career in construction coming out of TCHC? Or are we all seeing this short term 6 months? You know, it's good 6 months, but 6 months period.
Through the chair, yes, we do see that trajectory of continued employment. As noted in the report, approximately 80% of the people employed in the trades were with a unionized trade. So that means that they've more than likely started an apprenticeship program with the union. So if laid off, there's 2 points of support. One is through the union directly. You're on a recall list. And the other safety net that is provided is through TCHC staff to connect with them and then connect the laid off tenant with a different type of opportunity as soon as one becomes available. In addition, I do want to just provide some context. The data provided in this report only pertains to 2025. So typically what happens is employment has been facilitated on our revitalization sites. So we'll use Don Somerville as an example. Someone comes on board, they've been hired by the drywall company or the subcontractors putting up drywall in the building. That contract is not a multi-year contract, or that work does not last multiple years. Sometimes it lasts 12 months, sometimes it's 8 months or less. So what we do track at this point in time is whether they continued employment on another site. And when we come back to the TSC with a more of a long-term report every 3 to 5 years, we will be able to track the journey of tenants and be able to demonstrate whether they received long-term employment and support in that journey, or if employment typically fell off after a year or less than a year and there was no further traction or momentum towards their career.
Yeah, so retention rate from a sector lens over the 5 years.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by the committee? All right, then. I'm also cognizant of the time here. Okay, then I'll be asking the committee for a motion to receive this report on tenant economic opportunities. And it's simply to receive it and forward it to the board for their information. Dan, making that motion. Thank you. Seconded. All in favor? Yes? Carried. Okay, thank you. And then we'll go on to the last item here on the item 10, and I know we have a deputant, and that's Catherine. Yes. Good morning. Again. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I promise it's my last deputation.
That's okay. All right, carry on.
For today, I mean.
Oh, I understand that. We're not limiting you in the future. All right, go ahead.
Okay. I actually deputed at the executive committee when the items were on the agenda related to climate change and their heat relief strategy. That won't come as a surprise to any of you. The city's heat relief strategy directed Toronto Community Housing to open cooling rooms in their buildings. And I know Nadia had suggested some of them were already open, but not all of them were necessarily open. This year, the city has directed all landlords in Toronto to do the same. So if they have a community space in buildings where there's no in-suite air conditioning, they're to open their community room and provide air conditioning in that room. I actually thank Mayor Chow for directing Toronto Community Housing to open their community rooms as cooling rooms for tenants. The air conditioning window exchange program was well intended, met the corporation's needs, but unfortunately did not really meet the needs of our tenants, or it did for a little while, because those portable air conditioners, if you have bought one, are extremely noisy. There's multiple filters. The hoses are very cheap, resulting in tenants and staff having to duct tape the hose the second year they had this portable AC. And they also provided significantly less cooling capacity than the window AC that they traded in. The average one-bedroom unit in Toronto is about 600 square feet. So a 10,000 BTU portable AC with a new SAC rating provided by Toronto Community Housing cools about 300 square feet. So that's like the size of a bachelor unit or perhaps a bedroom if you close the door. So clearly more than one air conditioner or portable air conditioner would be needed to cool a one-bedroom unit. Some of these portable ACs actually lasted 2 years. Those that did not left many tenants without an air conditioner. It is highly likely more than half of the 25,000 portable air conditioners you have exchanged or purchased are now sitting in a landfill somewhere. With regards to Bill 97, Helping Tenants, Protecting Tenants Act, oh sorry, that was home buyers, forgot about those people, they have homes. Protecting Tenants Act, I have actually also reached out to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing around the severe impact of climate change on Ontario renters, urging them to move the amendments forward and proclaim them into effect. And like all other housing providers and renters, we wait. I understand there's an extraordinary cost and complexity attached to retrofitting Toronto Community Housing's aging housing stock. You know, all levels of government are going to have to step up because it's not going away. Thousands of the city's most vulnerable residents are depending on us to provide them with habitable housing to reduce the health risks of the extreme heat for our tenants. And, you know, the experts will need to consider what needs to be explored and figure out what are the right pathways to get us there. In the meantime, you know, weather experts have told us this summer is going to be even worse than last summer. So I have some recommendations. There's a surprise. Conduct an audit of the 259 Toronto Community Housing buildings that do not provide in-suite air conditioning, all of which we now know have community rooms. Determine which ones have air conditioning and which rooms do not have air conditioning. And time is of the essence. We need to purchase and install the AC model appropriate for each building and room to ensure we are in compliance by May 1st in advance of the city's direction. There are no exceptions to providing air conditioning for cooling rooms and community rooms unless there is significant demolition or construction required. Using the city's cooling room template, establish Toronto Community Housing daily operation access across the portfolio, tailored around scheduled programming which occurs in some communities, and have IT, access hours, change the hours of access so that tenants can use these cooling rooms. I would suggest Toronto Community Housing set access hours to align with the city's cooling centers, which is 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. Since it's a residential building, I actually suggest we would extend it maybe to 8 p.m. or a little bit later. Page 3 of your report indicates the cooling spaces are activated during extreme heat alerts. To clarify, the city amended the municipal code. The cooling requirements are to be open from June 1st to September 30th, maintain a 26 Celsius temperature, and notices are to include daily hours of operation. It does not state extreme heat alert days only. Lives are at stake. Tenant access must be consistent and consecutive. It can't be willy-nilly, dependent on the weather forecast, or left to site staff discretion. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any questions by members of the committee for the deputy, for Catherine? Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Catherine, for your presentation. This one, I've been debating whether I'm in conflict of interest because I live in an old building with no air conditioning. So hopefully we'll see some progress on that. And I appreciate your input today. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? No? All right. Anything that staff wishes to add to the report that we have? No? All right, then. Thank you very much. Sure, we've heard what you have to say. It all seems very reasonable and constructive, as always. And we'll, I'm sure, be hearing more about this. And let's hope that this summer isn't worse. But after the winter, I think we're ready for a break. But we'll see, all right? Because I know how difficult it must be, as one of our members has said, to not have air conditioning. So thank you. And I'm sure, as I say, we'll be hearing more about it again in the future. All right. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right. I need then from members of the committee just simply a motion to receive this report for our information. Fairly simple motion. Okay. Dan, you want to make? Okay. I had to think about that. All right. Seconder? Okay. A seconder is Debbie. All in favor? All right. Passed. All right. Then we're almost at the end of the public meeting. Any other business? And I have heard from Dan that he has an announcement to make. So to you, Dan.
Yeah, for something completely different. I have hearing loss, and I'm wearing a hearing aid. And I recently ordered 2 and got 4. Therefore, I have 2 hearing aids that they, rather than shipping it back to England, they told me to give it to some worthwhile person. So a lot of people in this room know a lot of people. If you know a tenant who's having hearing loss issues that you think a hearing aid or 2 would help, just send me an email. If I get more than 2 inquiries, I'll pick it out of a hat or something. But they're full. It's a full hearing aid. Instructions, cleaning materials, everything is in the package. So just let me know if you're interested or you know a tenant who could benefit from having them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful offer. All right. Thanks. All right. Any other business? All right, then. I'm going to ask for a motion, please, to end the public part of our meeting today. Debbie? Okay, and Uba, seconding. All in favor? Okay, passed. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.